Thank you so much, everyone, for joining our webinar today with Antonio Hautle from UN Global Compact. It's an extremely interesting topic which has gained interest from many of you. We will have the webinar as we usually have 1 hour. So the goal is to finish off around 1 o'clock Central European time, as we are located in Zurich. Antonio agreed also that we can share the presentation afterwards, so that means that you do not all have to write everything down. What Antonio also respects is an interactive discussion, so feel free to write questions in the chat during the presentation, but also if you feel comfortable, you can unmute your microphone and pose the question, but Antonio will come back to that as well. At the beginning of this webinar, when you dial in, we would be grateful if you are on mute so that we do not have any background noise which can disturb. We're very, very pleased to have Antonio as a speaker today. Antonio, I will not read your whole CV because that's what we've already published on our website. What I do think is very interesting, actually, because when I see the red line between what you have been doing in the past and also what you've already done when you were studying, amongst others, philosophy, but you also studied business ethics, and throughout your whole career, it looks like you already had the sense to contribute to something positive with a positive impact which is bigger than yourself. And I'm very grateful that you started in 2015 becoming the Executive Director of the Global Compact Network in Switzerland and Liechtenstein. And in that responsibility, you're also here today to inform us on the transition and to sustainable, responsible businesses, how we can do that efficiently, and what kind of tools that will help us get there. I'll keep it short from my side. The floor is for the next hour completely yours, Antonio. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Edith. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I see there are some few men, if I'm right. It's very nice to be here. It's a privilege also. And I hope I can give you some information and input and food for reflection. Let me start with 2 questions, and I would ask you just write some keywords in the chat. I had already sent you that in the invitation. Why should sustainability be part of the value proposition of the finance sector, wherever you are working? And why should it also be a proposal to the people working in this sector, in this industry? If you just could put some ideas from your perspective into the chat.
You see this chat, right, Antonio? So you can
future value driver.
Exactly.
Risk implications, decreasing risks. Customers should be aware of future risks and options. Decreased risks in time of volatility. It's a growth opportunity, customer demand. Okay. Tackle main challenges, ethical obligation. Good. Thank you very much. So I will try to give you a short overview on the issue as such. I mean, you're specialists. I don't go into the details, and especially not into the technical details, but do not hesitate, even in between, if I'm telling things, to ask questions. Just you can also either use the chat or unmute yourself, turn on the camera, and just intervene. Let's keep it quite open and active. So you have said it. This graph, it's been the publishing of the last market survey of Swiss sustainable finance. You know that probably even better than me. I remember when we started in 2015 in Switzerland here, I as Global Compact Director, Executive Director, they said it's some 9 to 15% of the whole assets are in sustainable or ESG investing. And what we have seen in the last 5 years is really an incredible change and speeding up of the whole issue. So it's quite obvious for you working in this field, even if you wouldn't be interested in sustainable finance, you would probably go in this direction because the customer demand is there and there is a market to develop further products in the field. I won't go into the details, but it's interesting. I wrote my license thesis in 87 to 89 at the Gregoriana in Rome on the responsibility of the entrepreneur in the social teaching of the Catholic Church. And I remember I had these discussions with my former colleagues from the college studying at the University of St. Gallen. They were laughing at me, telling me, what has ethics and business to do with each other? So there were some crazy philosophers, some theologians, and some very few economists who were really taking up the question of business ethics. That has completely changed in the last 25, 30 years. And fortunately, it has done that, because if we would go on as we did in the last 250 years in our capitalistic systems, the system would definitely collapse and we would destroy the foundations on which we are staying. You have seen the most important one is probably the Agenda 2030 on the SDGs adopted in 2015 and the different COPs, the Paris Agreement 2030, etc. I do not go into the details. We have also seen in the last couple of years huge evolutions in legal frameworks. So requests on business sustainability become more and more legally binding. And that will continue most probably. We have the national action plans. Also, Switzerland has the second one, 2020, 2023, where we see some progress. NGOs criticized it to be not ambitious enough, but at least things are moving. So that's the overall view on the developments, and that's the request. It's in German, sorry for that, but in short, the Swiss government requests from companies working or sitting in Switzerland to respect and implement international standards for responsible business conduct, though primarily the OECD guidelines on multinational enterprises, the UN guiding principles on business and human rights, and the UN Global Compact 10 principles. That wouldn't have been able 10, 15 years ago, that even the government would request that from companies in Switzerland, since, you know, Switzerland is very liberal and wouldn't intervene. Though we may discuss that afterwards, but I see two fields where where sustainability is relevant in business companies. Let me say that banks, but also others, private consultancies, etc., in the whole finance industry. I well remember it was a private bank in Geneva which contacted me 3 or 4 years ago, and then we had a workshop together. And my first question was, why do you try to implement the 10 principles and the approaches of UN Global Compact in your company? Why are we here? And their answer was quite clear. They started to do that, investment products, sustainable investment, ESG-oriented products, and they got the requests, and I suppose you do that too, from their clients. And what's about your own operations within your bank? Are you sustainable, and are you coherent with what you're selling? And I think that is the biggest challenge and also the biggest opportunity for the finance actors, finance sector actors, to really align their value chain as a whole, and not only their products and services they are vending to their customers and clients. So I will focus more on this. I will not go into the details here because there you are the specialists. I probably could learn a lot from you. On the investment side, it's more about to give you an overview what is happening in the markets, in the sustainable business activities. I would like to just present shortly, not in detail, the partner organizations we are working together with. The World Business Council for Sustainable Development is one of the larger organizations like UN Global Compact in the field, with some 500 large companies, very large companies involved. And the focus is also on the big companies, not on the middle-sized and smaller ones. They sit in Geneva, as you may know, and do a lot of high level and quality work for their member companies. By the way, we are working quite a lot also on the international level with them. The second important partner is B-Corp and B-Lab on a global level and also on a Swiss level. The difference is B-Lab is really a certification. Though companies joining the B Corporation certificate will have to recertify it on a regular basis. What we are doing with B-Lab Switzerland is the Swiss Triple Impact Program, which I have here. It's in German, but it's also around in French and English, with a lot of partners. The idea is to spread out the message of the Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals, especially to middle-sized and smaller companies, based on the instrument, I will come back to that later on, the SDG Action Manager, which is a tool developed by B-Lab and UN Global Compact to analyze your own activities as an organization. It can be a non-profit organization, even an individual household, until a large company. And then you get a feedback on where you're staying concerning the 17 goals and the Agenda 2030. Another important actor in Switzerland, I'm speaking here of Switzerland, knowing that many of you are also from abroad, from an international context, is ÖBU. It's a network, Verband für nachhaltiges Wirtschaften, so the Association for Sustainable Economy or Management. They were mainly focused on ecological approaches. Now we are collaborating strongly in a working group on supply chain management, where we gather Swiss companies on a regular basis 4 to 5 times a year for 3 hours to discuss concrete cases how to improve the supply chain management based on the triple bottom line. So with them, it's a smaller organization, but still they're very active, especially in the Swiss-German part. Then for the Swiss, maybe known, Swiss Cleantech is another organization, but more active in advocacy and lobbying, though on the political side, to really bring the sustainability agenda, ecological, not social, into the Swiss political debate to improve legislations and get as many companies as possible involved. And then there are dozens, if not hundreds, or even on the global level, thousands of initiatives and activities on different fields. In different fields, I just mentioned My Climate, where you can offset your CO2 emissions if you're traveling. That's also a partner of us, and we try to create an ecosystem or be part of these global and local ecosystem to bring forward the business sustainability and the responsible business conduct or corporate social responsibility. In your sector, I do not have to present that, you know that. PRI, Principles for Responsible Investment, in fact, is a spin-off or started out of UN Global Compact, beginning of the century, which is now one of the leading organizations in the field of ESG, investments. And in Switzerland, we have the Swiss Sustainable Finance, where most of your Swiss-based organizations, I suppose, are also member of. There are the specialists in sustainable investment and more also in impact investment. That's a short overview on the actors in the market. And now, is that fine? You just come back if you have questions. Huh? What I would like to show now is where I'm coming from and where I'm working, the UN Global Compact. And as you know, the idea is to create a big principle-based approach to be a force for good. That's the typical UN wording. Or as you have also seen on my slide in the background, let's make global goals local business. This idea of global, local, local, global is inherent in our DNA as a global organization. It started at the World Economic Forum in 1999. Yeah, no, 2000, sorry. With the speech of Kofi Annan, I propose that you, the business leaders, and we, the United Nations, initiate a global compact of shared values and principles, which will give a human face to the global market. For the older among you, you remember the 90s were the big dot-com expansion with huge growth in markets, and then the dot-com bubble exploded beginning late 99, beginning 2000, and this was the point where everybody realized we have to change something. And then in August, September 2000, the UN Global Compact was installed as an official sub-organization of the United Nations, directly connected to the Secretary General. And the present president of the UN Global Compact is Antonio Guterres. What is the idea? The idea was very smart in my eyes. They said, let's take the principles which are approved on a global level by all the states, the UN conventions. And we have the four main pillars: the human rights pillar, the International Labour Organization principles, then the agenda on climate. At the time it was Rio +20, and now it's the Agenda 2030 of Paris on ecological improvements. And the last pillar was the Anti-Corruption Convention of the United Nations. This is the basis of the UN Global Compact. And what we say, we expect companies to take a principle-based approach to business by embedding the 10 principles into strategies and operations and culture. We added the culture too. I come to that in a minute. And we connect the responsible business conduct to core UN values accepted by countries across the world. That is now the Agenda 2030 with its Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. So to summarize it, our vision is a more sustainable and inclusive global economy with two objectives: to make the 10 principles part of business strategy, operations, and culture everywhere, and then take action to implement corporate responsibility and support UN goals and issues. These are the two main objectives that I have already said. The difference between us and the World Business Council for Sustainable Development is mainly that we are a multi-stakeholder platform. Though we collaborate strongly with governments, with the civil society actors, we have them also as signatories in our networks, some 4,000 for the moment. The idea is really to create more and more learning, knowledge and sharing and collective action platforms, because we know and we are convinced that only together we can resolve the challenges for a future of this planet where all and everyone can live in human dignity. So that is the main approach of the UN Global Compact. And then that's more technical. There are two things. It needs an engagement of the top level of the company, so a letter of the chief executive to the UN Secretary General, with a repetition every year when they report. They have to publish their communication on progress. That's what we are now revising. It will go more and more in the direction of disclose data on the progress companies are making. So the new communication on progress, companies will have to fill in questionnaires and deliver basic data. And if they want to go to step 2, they have to disclose. And step 3 is even more to be disclosed with external audits. And the idea is to be transparent. Only if companies are transparent, we can also work with them, and NGOs will lobby, that's clear. But it's the idea to create a transparent global business community in the field of business sustainability. So what we want is to bring all companies, the hundreds of millions of companies, to the triple bottom line. That's the basic approach. It will not be enough, but that's the basic approach. So that they respect in their whole value chain the ecological, the social, and the economic sustainability. What we do not want is this one, we call it Mickey Mouse economy. As soon as you have some difficulties, only profit and income counts. So it's to create this balance between the 3 dimensions, which remains the biggest challenge for all companies. And thus said, it's quite evident the world is much better off than in 1951, when we had the end of the Marshall Plan, etc. And at the time when I was a director of an NGO, a development NGO in '84, my predecessors then wrote in the Manifest 2000 that this organization is there to be no longer necessary in the year 2000, because then we will have eradicated all poverty on this planet. In the last century, we were really convinced through the development approaches we would resolve all the problems of the world. We know that's not the case, but today the life expectancy of populations in Africa, Asia, and South America are much, much higher than at the time. This is taken from the gap frame developed by Business School Lausanne and HSG St. Gallen on the dates of 2017, showing the situation in sustainable production. And if you're looking, Switzerland is green there, it looks quite good. So, okay, we're very good. And many Swiss have the impression we are very good in sustainable production. But there is a wrong information in it, because it's due mainly to the crisis 2007-8, the financial crisis, where all the productive producing industries, in fact, outsourced their ecological intensive productions to the foreign countries, especially to the East. If we go to sustainable consumption, as you know, the situation is much worse. Switzerland has an ecological footprint of more or less 3. So we need 3 planets if the whole world population would live than we do. And the whole globe doesn't look good. So if we continue, we know we will have a collapse of the ecological system. So it's more than time to change things. That is the gap frame for Switzerland. You can find it for every country of the world, or for most of the countries. What we are convinced is that responsible business is key to solve many of the today's societal and ecological challenges. And we are the biggest value producer, so we have the opportunity to really change things. And that's why in 2015, UN Global Compact formulated this claim, making global goals local business, when the Sustainable Development Goals from the Agenda 2030 were accepted by most of the states at the UN in New York. And since then, together with all the other actors I have mentioned, we try really to bring this agenda into the private sector together with the civil society and the public sector. Now, Edith, you asked me to say some words about the UN Global Compact strategy. As you know, oh, there is a mistake. 2021 to 2023, we have a new executive director of on the global level, Sandor Jambo. And we are now in the decade of action. And we said in this decade of action, the strategic ambition of the Global Compact is to accelerate and scale the global collective impact of business by upholding the 10 principles and delivering the SDGs through accountable companies and ecosystems that enable change. That's the strategy we are pushing and bringing forward. Here you can, sorry. Here we are. I do not read the whole text. If you are interested more in the details, you find that under this link. That's what I've just read. I would like to highlight the 10 principles. The 10 principles are for us the ABC or the basics for sustainable and responsible and decent business. And these principles, they will stay. It's clear that human rights will be relevant, labor norms, gender issues, inclusion, ecological protection, and anti-corruption are the basis of a sustainable business. The SDGs are time-bound, they're connected to the Agenda 2030, and then there will come something afterwards, and we probably will have and must go on. Our ambition, and I just picked the most important parts here, is really to have accountable companies. And now to the financial sector, I think that's one point where you as actors have a big leverage and influence, because investments will drive the accountability of companies. And if your sector is asking transparency and disclosure from the companies you invest in or you're in contact, that will bring forward and move forward the whole global and local economies. And what we also want is our enabling ecosystems. And the financial sector is one of these ecosystems which are core and crucial. For the Swiss, you remember in the late 80s, it was allowed to deduct bribery you paid to companies in Africa and abroad from your taxes. So it was counted as a cost. And it took a long way to change this mentality in Switzerland. You remember the banking secret in Switzerland was there for a long time, and Switzerland was known as the laundry washing the washing machine of dirty money of the mafia, especially in Ticino. That has now completely changed, and it has to go on. And what we are wishing that this financial system is becoming a driver of sustainable and responsible business conduct in their field of influence. So what we do is promote action and accountability among our members. And we partner with a lot of other actors. And one of these actors could also be your association. I already told Edith, could we look to do joint things together? And we also want to be a platform for policy dialogue and advocacy. I do not go further in the details, but to summarize the main approach of UN Global Compact, this slide shows it clearly. This is the request we have to all and every company: act responsibly and check your supply chain, check your value chain, your production, your distribution chains, check your products and services if they violate one of these principles and where they positively contribute to it. So the do no harm analysis here is crucial as a first step. And the second step is then to see where do we have a value added, a USP, and where also a product and the product to sell to a larger community. And the second one is find opportunities. I always say the 17 goals are probably the business of opportunity of the 21st century, because we have agreed on these goals on a global level, and that's unique in the world history. We never had it, even if we know that a lot of them is not respected by many actors, but this is like a guiding frame where we as businesses can orient ourselves and discover new opportunities for products and services. And also here we tell our members, first do a do no harm analysis, go and check where you have a negative impact, and then go and check where you can contribute positively. Because it doesn't make sense that, for instance, you are very strong in infrastructure, in sustainable infrastructure, and at the same time you import things and raw materials and semi-products where you have slavery, very poor remunerations and salaries behind. So the coherence between the whole approaches are crucial for a sustainable and responsible business.
Antonio?
Yeah.
We have a question from Marion Eringhouse, which is related to the topic. And she asked, how is your position in regards to the recently passed bilateral business contract with Indonesia? Can you please
do you ask me as a person or not?
I think maybe, well, actually, personally, I would be interested in both your views.
The position of the Global Compact as such in Switzerland is we do not take position to political issues for very clear reasons, because our members may have different opinions. But here, if we take the contract in Indonesia, I can be very open and clear. I'm very positive against it. It's the first time in history that we have at least some conditions in a bilateral contract. I agree that bilateral agreements are always sensitive, and Switzerland is normally very strongly looking for its own interests. And I think the bilateral agreements have to include more and more social and ecological aspects. And I was in favor because it's the first time in history that this happens, in Switzerland at least. Maybe in other countries it's different, even if we know that palm oil remains and still is sensitive. So that's my personal response. But as you know, there are always in these kind of contracts and in these political positionings, different parts where you can be in favor or against it. But if that continues to be more the case, that we have this involvement of social and ecological conditions in the bilateral agreements, that would be a good step forward.
Thank you, Antonio.
So to come back to US sector, because yesterday I had a webinar with for smaller financial actors, and the question was, what can you do as a company? I mean, this part of the investments, it's obvious, there is your biggest leverage. But you as a company may have other sectors where you should watch if you're a bank, if you are a larger institutional investors, etc. I mean, the A priority is how you shape your products and services. That is obvious and evident. But then you may have as a bank also a large supply chain in your buildings, in paper, in IT more and more. All the digital equipment is highly relevant in concern of social conditions in the production, but also the energy consumption and the efficiency of these products. And then smaller things like cleaning and catering, security service. I oftentimes discover companies who do not know how their cleaning companies pay their people. And sometimes they have even outsourced it to foreign companies. So make sure that you are having a clear policy how your suppliers respond to your code of conduct, etc. Then evident anti-corruption, compliance and governance, that is very much regulated within your sector. But since things move very fast and very strongly, it remains one of the core preoccupations of your sector. The third point I see is the working and employment conditions. And as we have or had Women's Day and the ringing bell for gender equality, I'm convinced that's one of the big concerns of the financial sector, not only of this, but the inclusion of more women in leading management positions, in my eyes, is crucial. Since women have other approaches, are much more sensitive for certain issues, I think we as society can only win if we continue. Inclusion, I said, ecology and infrastructure, I already said, and artificial intelligence, which is a new and huge challenge. So that data security, digital products, etc.
Antonio, we again have a question.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you, but from Sandrine Simon, and she says, do you actively consult companies in their adaptation of the strategy to the principles?
Let's say this way, we do not, I come to it in a moment if you want, but we are not a consultancy company. We coach companies. So companies who join us, they get a 2-3 hours coaching through us, where we make a first analysis and look where they have the biggest risks and the biggest opportunities in the field of business sustainability. And then we propose concrete actions how to process. And what we do is a lot of training, a lot of webinars, in-person trainings, in group trainings. That's our core focus. But we don't call ourselves consultancy. For that, we have the specialists and we do not have the time neither. But we help companies to find the right consultants if they have specific issues to treat. What we deliver is really the basic information and a huge framework for exchange. Companies learn a lot from each other. That's why our sharing and learnings and our key peer learning groups are so much used and loved by our members.
Thank you, Antonio. So it's good to know that you do actively help.
Yeah, I will
and also from Sandrine, great, thank you for answering the question.
So I think it's already, I'm too long. Maybe that gives you some answers, Sandrine. The UN Global Compact delivers a lot of opportunities for companies to get involved and learn. I can't mention all of them. It's a huge amount of, and if a company is joining the UN Global Compact, we are looking with them what makes most sense, and we would guide them through their to the activities where they take most profit out of it. I just mentioned activities which may be interesting for you. These are these activities in the field of finance, communicate the values of sustainable investors, the UN Alliance for SDG Finance, the Sustainable Stock Exchange Initiative, short-termism in financial markets. This is also one of the activities we offer to finance actors. And then ask stock exchanges to issue voluntary reporting guidance. That's a sort of invitation and advocacy to create more transparency at stock exchanges, and integrate the principles for responsible investment in companies and financial industry. What is often forgotten, also in large companies who have a lot of investments, we also guide them and tell them, do not just look at your value chain from procurement to products and services, but have also a look on your investments, buildings, semi and long-term investments. It doesn't make sense to align all on sustainability and then you invest in arms and carbon emissions, etc. if you invest your liquidity on the financial market. And what we are doing in Switzerland and Liechtenstein are these 6 priorities. I do not go into the details. If you are interested, let us know. But human rights and labor rights are crucial, especially in the supply chain. Though supply chain management is one of our core topics. Anti-corruption too, together with the Basel Institute of Governance. And sustainability reporting is this year very crucial because, you know, the new guidance will have mandatory reporting for more companies in Switzerland after the referendum of the initiative for responsible transnational companies. So these are the 6 focus areas we are working more this year. Climate is also an important part, and we organize sharing and learnings, trainings, etc. And here with the Liechtenstein initiative, you may know, we are also collaborating and spreading the word and make it known. And we interact also quite a bit with Principles for Responsible Investments, PRI, and Swiss Sustainable Finance to attract especially the smaller actors in the financial market in Switzerland to this sustainability agenda. And this is more, you find that on our website. I will not go into the details. As you have seen, we had target gender equality, and we will have a global impact initiative from UN Global Compact implemented here in Switzerland together with other European local networks, where we really want to promote the women empowerment principles within our companies and make it even more known also in middle-sized companies. Then the reporting part is important this year. Here we have a series of trainings for our companies and interested external companies. Another question, yeah. Do you also work with startups or only with established SMEs? No, startups are for us the most interesting companies because, yeah, I think I have a slide late. No, I had it here. This one. Because what I observe, startups oftentimes in the impact hubs, that's the most interesting one. These guys oftentimes go and take the 17 goals and the targets and check where they could develop a new business model. So they have this outside-in perspective. They do not sit in their small business logic, but they really try to develop new approaches to respond to needs the local or global economy society is looking for. So we are looking very much also for small and smallest companies and try to bring their know-how into our network. And by the way, we are also collaborating with different actors globally and locally who are promoting impact investment. Then another one, in the large companies, who are the people taking your training and collaborating with you? Finance departments, communication, etc. Thanks for this question. Let's hear. It depends a little bit on the issue. We try to get hold of different levels. The most important level for us is the management board. So we have access, and that's one of our privileges as local as global compact, because the CEO has to re-sign the COP, the communication on progress, or the sustainability reporting every year. And we invite them to take part in high-level meetings. And what we are right now launching is a training for board members to get together with the Board Foundation and the Board Initiative of Canada to really get more access to board members and to sensibilize them for the issue of business sustainability. It's not just an add-on, it must be core of the DNA of companies, because economic sustainability is as important as social and ecological. That said, normally the main contacts are the people working in sustainability in larger companies, if they have sustainability departments, head of sustainability or whatever. But we also try to get all the compliance people for all what is anti-corruption, etc. Nadine is calling me. I'm not okay. Yeah, I will stop.
I wouldn't answer at this point. Just go ahead with your presentation, please.
Yeah, because she is she not online? No?
Most likely not.
Okay, good. So we are working really with the sustainability people, with the management board, and with the compliance and legal people. These are the most often interactions we have. And depending on the trainings, then we have the different participants. Human rights due diligence is for sustainability people and compliance people. But for instance, we have now these briefings on regulatory trends on the European and international level. There oftentimes we have also the legal departments getting involved. Yeah, so you will have the slides. You can also see that on our website. These are activities we are doing here locally. And I would like to finish, because it's already 12:50, just an overview. The local network is still quite small. It's growing fast. On a global level, we are growing even faster. We have some 16,000 members at the moment. When I started in 2015, we had 14 in Switzerland. We are 212 or something at the moment. So the network is growing, and this shows also that the interest is quite increasing step by step. With that, I stop for the moment, and maybe there are other feedbacks or questions or comments.
Please, everyone, if you have a question to Antonio, feel free to write it in the chat or to unmute your microphone and even your video if you feel comfortable with that. Antonio, I have one question, and that's related to companies, sustainable corporations. There's a lot of pressure on listed companies, also from the financial sector, obviously, on integrating sustainability into their business models. We also spoke about the smaller ones. What about medium-sized companies, which are not on the stock exchange, who already exist, like family companies for decades? How do you approach them to make them aware?
We have a whole key account management process, etc. What we do is our business associations, chamber of commerce, etc. That's the way we communicate. But oftentimes we attract them, don't ask me why, because especially middle-sized family companies have oftentimes in their DNA this need to be more ethical. It's more on the level, on the personal level, and they have a natural attraction to more sustainable approaches. And just take one example, Firmenich. Many of you may know that it's one of the large perfume producers, aromatic components in Geneva. They're privately owned. They're not at the stock exchange, but they're very, very much advanced. in the field of sustainability in different fields, and that's due to the owners of the company who say we want to have an impact on social and ecological changes. So, and these examples spread out, I think it's even also the market demand is more important than the legal frameworks, because you have clients and investors more and more asking from companies to be more sustainable. And legislation oftentimes follows. And then it's both. It's clear legislation makes pressure on companies who are not open, who are not aware of, but probably more important is the market, which is changing quite fast. And we are really building on this voluntary approach on the one side, hoping that then reasonable legislation will follow. So it's also quite a bit of self-interest to be in the market and an internal intrinsic motivation to do good.
Yeah, thank you very much. You see the next question, which comes in from Marion Ehringhaus. Analyzing the full supply chain down to every resource is super cumbersome. Many companies are struggling to get full transparency. What can be done by whom? Governments, regulation, NGOs? Make it easier for them to get the full transparency and control over their supply chain. Thank you, Marion. Good question.
Marion, thank you. This is one of the crucial activities in all companies. But I would say, first of all, it will never ever be possible to control fully a supply chain. That's probably not feasible, especially if you're a larger company with some 100,000 and more suppliers. So what we really propose to companies, and most do it risk-based. There are tools and instruments to know which countries, which suppliers could be the most risky, and then have an eye on them and develop policies. And it's clear governments are in the responsibility, and the biggest struggle for bigger companies in countries like Congo, so fragile contexts, the challenge is much bigger because oftentimes corruption is part of the system there. How do you handle that? There are methods, but it's clear governments are responsible, regulations is responsible, and we try to more and more involve also NGOs in these contexts, because NGOs oftentimes have know-how on a local level and can help companies to understand better the context. So what we have developed, and we have a lot of instruments, if you want to know more, Marion, on that, how to really build up a supply chain management. And we have good examples of larger and medium-sized companies with systems. And again, a company who is starting should say, we start and then improve step by step. Don't expect to be perfect. And even a Nestle, Novartis, Roche, who developed in Switzerland huge processes in the field, always have incidents, and it will also be in the future. It's by nature. In such complex supply chains, you will have problems, and you're there as a manager to resolve these problems step by step. But what we can deliver are really these connections, and we try to bring people together. Also, World Business Council for Sustainable Development is working strongly in this field with the large companies, because that's still one of the biggest challenges we are facing.
Thank you very much, Antonio. If there are not any more questions, I think we're perfectly on time. I can only say from my perspective, I've learned so much in this last hour, and I hope it's also true for all our members. If you have any questions for Antonio or for us, please feel free to contact us directly also after the webinar. For your information, you can write in your diaries. The next event of Women in Sustainable Finance will be the 8th of April between 12 and 1 with Angela de Wolf of Concert. But again, a very interesting topic, namely, how can technology support the transition towards more transparency in sustainable finance? In the meantime, yes, Antonio will share his presentation with you. He's happy to share the presentation so we can read over it. So we will provide that to you. Thank you all for the interactive session. It's always nice also as a speaker, because I know, Antonio, that it's interactive and people really dive into the topic. Thank you, Antonio, for your excellent presentation and all the information. Thank you all, also participants, for being here, which makes our life valuable. I wish you all a very, very nice afternoon. Hope to speak to all of you soon and look forward to seeing you hopefully on the 8th of April. Thank you, Antonio.
Thank you.
It was excellent. Really learned a lot.
Okay, bye-bye.
Have a great afternoon to
I
everyone.
will send you just the PDF of the presentation, then you can forward it.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you so much. There are a lot
Good.
of thank yous coming in on the chat right now.
Okay.
Thank
Good.
you.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.